most of the space economy is actually using the data from space rather than actually rockets and satellites, which is the cool stuff that everyone looks at. Actually, most of the economy is actually the applications that use satellite data. So things like GPS tracking, positioning, also the likes of tourism apps and things like that. So that's what uses satellites. And so we do a lot of funding and support for businesses who want to develop a product going forward. So that's me.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Melissathorpe. I'm head of engagement at Spaceport Cornwall. Spaceport Cornwall is a consortium made up of Cornwall Council, Goonhilly Earth Station, and Virgin Orbit, and we are going to be launching the UK into space via a horizontal launch operation from Cornwall Airport, Newquay, from 2022. This will be the first place anywhere in Western Europe that we're offering horizontal launch, but also one of the first places in the world to integrate space launch with an operational civilian airport. So it's quite an innovative way of launching to space. And what that's going to do is create better access to space, but also access to space from the UK. So the UK has a really growing satellite manufacturing industry, but at the minute we can't launch them from here. So we want to fill that marketplace and capture that marketplace for Cornwall, for the Southwest, UK, but also, in Europe as well. So we're developing this new capability, and as James says, yes, we do the rockets and the cool stuff, but actually what we want to do is be a catalyst for the rest of the industry in the Southwest. So attract interest to the area by using our profile, attract new technologies based around launch, but also around the propulsion, around the fuel, and around how we make it more sustainable as well to launch to space.
Fantastic. Thank you, Melissa. And David, do you want to do us a 1-minute intro, please?
Yeah, hi. Well, I'm David Ashford, founder and chief exec, Bristol Spaceplanes. My first job in the early 1960s, straight out of university, Hawke City Aviation Advanced Projects Group. And I was working in their spaceplane design team. And at the time, satellites were launched using converted ballistic missiles. You only fly them once. That was never going to be economical. Most big aircraft companies in Europe and America had quite big teams looking at airplanes to fly to space and get back again for launching satellites. And the consensus at the time was it was the obvious next step, just about feasible, and it would revolutionize spaceflight. Because you don't need to be a rocket scientist to appreciate that an airplane is a much better form of transport than a ballistic missile. And to cut a long story short, it's never happened. Well, I took early retirement. I did a variety of things, mostly with British Aerospace. Took early retirement to set up Bristol Spaceplanes. And what we're saying that nobody else is that what would have been a difficult project at the time in the 1960s, feasible but expensive and high tech, all the technology has since been flown on other airplanes. So it would now be a straightforward development. And there's a compelling business case. But the obstacle is corporate groupthink. Space is run by big monopolistic government agencies. And they're very reluctant to accept what was then a straightforward idea is now considered revolutionary. Anyway, we've got a little, I don't know if you can see that, a little demonstrator called Ascender. Takes off on its jets, gets up to Mark 2, switch on the rocket, up into space, a couple of minutes in space, 1 passenger, and remarkably inexpensive to develop. So we're trying to get backing for that.
That's fascinating, and great that we've got such an interesting, new and innovative technology being developed in the Southwest. So we've got quite a few people watching today, sort of members of Tech Southwest, and we're very conscious that a lot of people sort of see space as being this sort of sometimes considered glamorous or industry by itself, but actually there's actually quite a few interesting areas where that space can actually affect other areas of the tech sector quite significantly, and can present quite a few opportunities. Has anyone got any examples of where space technology can actually be used by other industry areas?
Well, I suppose most of the technology for space goes in multiple areas. If it's to do with the hardware and the rockets, most of the people that supply into it supply multiple sectors. So it's fairly generic. Most people don't set out to be a space business, as cool as that might be. They've got multiple clients. But it's worth noting that a lot of the space stuff, as put forward, it's around the applications. But we do have some really capable companies in the southwest that are in the space sector. So there's a company called Spacex up in Cheltenham and Bristol, really, really capable. All their business is fundamentally the space sector through developing the launch software for ESA. They've now been bought by CGI, a big Canadian company. So it shows that actually they're really very profitable business. We've got the tech cluster down in Thorpe around the optics and for the space sector. That's all really niche, but really, really capable of what they're into. And then you've got the growing AI capability of using the data from space and what you can do for it, and then predictive technologies going forward. So there is actually a lot happening down here, and it's not what most people think of as space.
Interesting. Melissa, sorry, James, do you want to carry on?
Yeah, I think what's been quite eye-opening to me, I've moved from the aerospace industry into space probably about 6 years ago when this project started. And I think, as David mentioned, it's up until this point, it's been really led in whole industry by kind of governments, agencies, and state-led enterprises. And what you're seeing now is new entrants into the marketplace that have no background in space, but what they're doing is taking the commercialization of space and the entrepreneurs that are entering the market, and they're creating new opportunities for not traditional space industries. And you're starting to see some really incredible startups that are doing amazing things from medical to agri-tech, to environmental monitoring, that are, like James said, using the space data for their own business. So they might not necessarily see themselves as space companies, but they're using space technology. So at more conferences that we go to now, the more and more we see is non-traditional space startups coming into the fold and realizing the potential and the opportunities from space. And I think the main barrier to all of this is the access to space. So what you're starting to see is a push across the industry to lower that cost of accessing space, so that these new commercial enterprises can start to get their product into space or get the data back from space more specific, more bespoke, and take advantage of the new technologies of microsatellites and nanosats. So what you're seeing is this shift in the industry away from a lot of the state-led. A lot of it still is, but you're into this new commercialization, and that's just bringing these new players into it. And our message, I think, in Cornwall in the Southwest is to take advantage of it. It's to realize what the opportunities are. And if you're a farming business, how can you use space data to look at making your business more efficient? And
there has been a huge amount of funding coming from European Space Agency and the European Space Agency and the UK Space Agency, particularly on the back of COVID. But therefore for challenges to fix communications issues, or challenges to help deliver packages, or help farming. Like they're very different. The challenges is not to do with the space sector, but it just happens the space sector facilitates that problem being solved. So yeah, there's a lot. Most of this work that goes in the space, fundamentally, the end user doesn't see it as a space product or space service.
That's similar with lots of technologies, isn't it? There's an awful lot goes on behind the scenes, and what people see in their app is simply just the front end interface. David, have you seen any sort of interesting opportunities or examples?
Well, I think the biggest, if you look at the future markets, assume we've got low cost access to space, but it's safe and it's reliable, and it's about as easy as going to Antarctica. So it's a fairly routine sort of thing. What are the big new markets? And the one that sticks out prominently is space tourism. And a lot of people think that is going to be the market, the first market to be big enough to demand economies of scale, to get the cost down, to really drive costs down. So we're seriously projecting 1,000 times reduction in the cost of sending people to space within 15 years using only proven technology.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So that presumably opens up, you know, huge opportunities and things. Has anyone seen any really interesting companies sort of innovating so far? Whether, you know, either in the Southwest or elsewhere in the world. I mean, there's, you know, it's always good to learn from other businesses in other parts of the world, but businesses that are perhaps you know, started up and, as Melissa said, you know, have come into the space industry that aren't necessarily space companies, but, you know, actually are seizing the opportunities.
Well, yeah, there's quite a lot going on in the Southwest, but so I suppose it all comes. A lot of the stuff seems to be happening in the satellite data part of it. So there's a company called Remedy, a small little startup, and they've innovated around. They are helping mine clearance. They're basically set up by a guy, former bomb disposal expert, and he is basically saw a problem in the fact that countries where they're war-torn don't understand where landmines are, don't understand where the burst water pipes are, the electricity's down. And he's created a mapping tool using local data and satellite data that basically overlays where had a resource plan to get the local environment back working again. And that's just really kind of, it's a really good story. It's a really nice thing. It's helping people, but fundamentally, without the satellites of the positioning and the maps and the imagery on top, that product wouldn't exist. And it's really niche. He's found his market that he can go to. There's not many other people in it, and he's proven to be quite successful. So yeah, there's kind of some real different things out there.
Yeah, there's some incredible.
Yeah, sorry, Melissa.
Yeah, just what James is saying, it still blows me away about what's coming out, even regionally. Some of the companies that we work with, and we, you know, as I said before, we just want to be that catalyst. We want to support when we go to big conferences, or we are able to have a platform because of what we're doing with Virgin. We tend to try and bring any companies along with us that are in it. So we went for the UK Space Conference last year, and we brought several local companies along with us that, again, might not necessarily see themselves as space companies, but we brought them in. And one of them, a couple of young women from a startup down here, Data Duopoly, they you know, have a satellite application that tracks queues at major tourist events. And they won the pitch to the primes there, and they got awarded on stage their award by Tim Peake. So it's just providing that platform is really interesting. But again, like, you know, there's so many amazing companies from mining to I was at a conference over in France, and there's this amazing startup company out of Germany, and they're looking at, you know, there are a bunch of they are doctors still, and they're looking at researching cancer using microgravity, and they're actually now a space company because they're sending up these nano satellites with bespoke bacteria on it that just goes and performs experimentations up in space in zero gravity, and is able to do things that would take years to do down on Earth. So there's just incredible applications out there that we're seeing, you know, when we look at the upstream and the downstream. And it continues to, you know, from people looking at 3D printing food in space, and another company over in Wales now, Spaceforge, looking at how they maintain satellites in space. So in orbit servicing of hardware as well. So it's kind of endless. And that's what's exciting about it, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. So what advice would you give to other sort of tech businesses if they were, you know, perhaps thinking, well, you know, maybe there is something I should be exploring? Are there places to go to? Are there events, or what should people be doing if they want to just sort of start exploring the potential opportunities of using space?
More than happy to come and speak to people like me. I can help kind of point them in the way of sort of ideas, funding, or supports. There's also the National Satellite Applications Catapult based in Oxfordshire, who have a regional centre down in the southwest, based out of Exeter University. And myself and those teams can all help basically try and, if you've got an idea or you've got a technology that could potentially be used in the space sector, we'll maybe help you get to the right person who can then make that become more real. And then if you've got the idea becoming a bit more real, then there's funding and support via European Space Agency, national bodies, or even regionally. There's lots of funding available. So yeah, one more to come speak to me.
Well, the other place you could go is the UK Space Agency. Just ask them.
Yes, and they have a forum that's run by Satellite Applications Catapult where you can effectively get in to speak to them, because the Space Agency themselves aren't necessarily the easiest to get to the right person. They're a very capable team, but I'd probably go via the Catapult myself.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that the government is increasingly supportive of the space industry. They see it as a really big opportunity. They want to kind of secure 10% of the marketplace in the next few years. So there's a huge push from a government level to get this industry really going in the UK. So what you're now starting to see is trickling down into the agencies and into local regional government is funding and pots of funding and support for innovators and people that might be pivoting into the industry. So it's a great time because you're getting kind of support from industry, but also then from government as it's commercializing as well. So it's not necessarily that you have to tie yourself to a government agency anymore. You can get involved through the private sector as well. And there's lots of private companies out there looking for support. And, we ran a local supply chain day for Virgin Orbit. So when Virgin are coming here to launch their satellites, part of that is that their ground support system is going to be procured all in the UK. So we put out, basically an open call for people to get involved in that. So it's just really starting to get going. And it's a great time to get in touch with somebody like James and the aerospace team or somebody in your region that's similar, because it's just becoming more and more of a priority for government.
It was interesting that the UK government has just bought a 45% stake in a company called OneWeb. It's a constellation satellite company. It's fairly similar to Starlink, so Elon Musk's Virgin solution, where you might have seen their nanosats going around the world. But they've got a slightly different solution, and that went into administration for financial reasons. The government has now taken a 45% stake in that at $500 million. So it shows the UK government is serious about space and making that something that will then be like a cornerstone of the UK space economy, and then we can just continue to grow.
Excellent. So time flies when you're having fun. There are a couple of polls on the right hand side if people want to complete those. First one: would you like to go into space? Which is already 50% of people have indicated hell yes they would like to, but there are other options there. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm really sorry, David, your stream has stopped for me, but apparently you are still live for everyone else. So thank you very much, everyone. And the next session is around skills and skills strategy and technology. So if our participants and viewers would like to make their way to the next session, that'd be great. And just leaves me to thank David, Melissa, and James. Thank you very much for your insight. Everyone watching at least spends a little bit of time just exploring what the potential opportunities might be for their business.
Okay. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, Toby.